Hello, viewers. I'm glad you're here. Today I'm going to try a new technique for brewing makgeolli, delicious Korean rice wine. And this technique, well, it's actually a very old technique, but it's new for me. It's gumeongddeok, or whole rice cakes. I'm going to try to make what's called hahyangju, or lotus scent wine. So please watch my earlier video to learn more about how I overcame my fear of gumeongddeok and for discussion of the recipe that I'm going to follow in this video. This is one of the longest duration recipes I've ever brewed, so there's plenty of time to learn and reflect about this process. I don't think I did everything right, but that's okay. It will still ferment into something. Just be aware that you might not want to follow everything I did exactly like this video, so there's room for improvement. So here's my recipe summary. So I had to make some adjustments to the recipe so that it would fit in my jar and so that the first stage would be large enough to be practical. So the first stage is the gumeongddeok and the second stage is go-do-bop. And it ferments for 40 days and you let it mature for 30 more days. So this is a long recipe. And you can also see this is a very dry recipe. So I usually brew with a rice to water ratio of 1:1, but this is a 7:3 rice to water ratio. Well, let's get into it. Let's brew. So here's my nuruk, so yulgok nuruk. I'm going to use 150 grams of nuruk, and I'm going to put it in direct sunlight. This is the babche method. It's a good thing to do. So rotate and mix it a few times so that every piece of nuruk gets some sunlight and air. And this is the rice powder I'm using, the rice flour. I'm using 200 grams of dry rice flour. If the rice flour is clumpy, you would need to sift it. This rice flour is fine. Now I'm using dry rice flour because that's what I can get here, but Korean brewers like to use wet rice flour, the kind made from rice that has been soaked in water and then ground into flour. Now add 200 milliliters of water, a bit at a time, while stirring. That might not seem like enough water, but it's going to work. Just watch. Now it's cooled down enough so that I can knead it by hand. It is important to feel the texture. So it seems soft enough, plenty soft enough. It's actually too soft and sticky, and I think I could have used even less water here. Oh, but should I give up? I can't form any shapes because it's too soft and sticky. It's just sticking to my hand. I can't do anything with it. So what can I do? Well, I washed my hand and I left it wet, and that made it easier to touch the dough. Now it's not sticking, and I can actually form a ball. Squish the ball flat and then poke a hole in the center. Make it pretty flat, and okay, that's a gumeongddeok. I made one. That's a whole rice cake. And cover it with a damp cloth so that it doesn't dry out as I make the other ones. Okay, so I have 7 gumeongddeok here. So the overall procedure for gumeongddeok is boil them, mash them, stick them in a brew. So that's what we're going to do. And then drop them into boiling water carefully. And I boiled them for 10 minutes. And you should stir occasionally so they don't stick to the bottom. They should start floating after a while, and let them boil a few more minutes after that. And now take them out, but don't break them as you're doing that. Oops. Okay, now drain off the water. I weighed them, and the gumeongddeok actually absorb almost no water from being boiled. Now I'm going to cut one in half with a knife just to see if it's cooked all the way through. So now mash it, and but I waited too long. By cutting that one in half with a knife and doing the video, I waited too long. It's cooled down a bit. These are too hard to mash easily now. They started off really soft. Okay, so I'm going to have to get my hands in there. It's cooled down a bit, so I'm going to have to mash this with my fingers to make sure. Yeah, to really do it, I have to mash it with my fingers. Okay, in time, it does mash fine. Just took some extra effort. Spread it out on the side of the bowl like this, and let it cool to room temperature. Again, we don't want to let it dry out, so cover it with a damp cloth. So while we're waiting for the mashed gumeongddeok to cool down, I'm going to bring in the nuruk from the sun and make sure it's powdered. I take out all the large pieces and turn them into a powder. Why am I doing this? Because the next step, I need to mix all this nuruk into the cooled, mashed gumeongddeok. And so the pieces of nuruk need to be small. This is going to be the hardest part to do, I think. Okay, now the cooled, mashed gumeongddeok is just a slab of rice cake now. It's difficult to work with. I'm going to try to mix in the nuruk here. It's well, I'm doing my best, but it's pretty difficult. So I'm going to add some water to this. And since I saved the gumeongddeok water, I let it cool. So that starchy water, I'm going to use that to help mix this up. So this will make it easier for me to incorporate everything evenly. And since I added the water, I might as well add some yeast at the same time. I'll add half a teaspoon of this sourdough yeast. So I've mixed this for 4 minutes so far, but I really need to mix this for 30 minutes in total. And this is very strenuous. My hand, my wrist, my arm is sore at the end of this. This is the most strenuous part of this procedure so far. If you like this video, please click that like button and subscribe. And please share this video wherever it is appropriate. I really appreciate your help in spreading the word about rustic Asian rice wine. So I hope you're getting a chance to brew rice wine, to drink the rice wine that you enjoy. Yeah, even though I've sped up this video, I do want you to see that I really did mix this for half an hour in total. And even though it softens up a bit, it's still difficult to get into the jar. This is something you really need to do with your hands. Don't see any other way of doing this. And in the jar, pat it down, get the air bubbles out. But that's what it looks like. It's just a blob in a jar. Not really like a brew yet. Leave the lid loose and put it in the cabinet to ferment. Next day, take a look. There are some gas bubbles in it, so that's good. And it's softer than before, but it's not liquid at all. Okay, so just stir it like this for today. And then the next day, it does look more liquid, but it's mostly solid. Okay, well, keep on stirring. Maybe it really is liquid. Well, not quite, but it is softer. Now day 4, this looks liquid. There's bubbles. Yeah, I can see the bubbles on the top. Okay, finally it's liquid. So I'm going to get the rice ready for the gong-do. And this is 1.2 kilograms of sweet rice. And I wash that for 10 minutes gently and soak it for at least 3 hours. Then drain it for 30 minutes, put it in the steamer, and steam it for 35 minutes. I'm going to do something a little different today. I'm going to sprinkle cold water on it now and stir it. That's going to ensure that the gong-do is evenly cooked. Now I turn down the heat and let it steam for 10 more minutes. And then take it out and spread it out to cool. And as it's cooling, I cover it with a wet cloth so it doesn't dry out. And now we come to another strenuous part of this recipe. Have to mix the first stage into the gong-do. And I'm going to add some water too. That's going to help me get that first stage out still too thick. So I'm going to end up adding 400 milliliters of water in total. And I'm going to mix this by hand for 25 minutes. Now this is really important to get everything uniform and also to make sure that every bit of rice is separated, every bit of nuruk is evenly distributed, and everything is in contact with the air. Probably I was supposed to mix this for longer than 25 minutes, but that was just the limit of my endurance. I could only do this for 25 minutes. But this is an important part of brewing, is doing these kinds of doing this kind of mixing by hand. You have to have some stamina for this kind of effort. Okay, then put it in the jar. Clean up the edge a bit. Keep the lid loose again and put it in the cabinet to ferment. All right, so day 5, what does it look like? Okay, no liquid at all, but I do hear some quiet bubbles, so that's good. I'm going to wrap this up because it is a little cool in the house today. Let's keep this warm. The fermentation produces heat by itself, so let's trap that heat and keep the jar a bit warmer that way. Okay, now the next day, you can see it is bubbling. Top looks normal. Now we're just going to watch this ferment day by day. There's not really a liquid layer forming. I'm watching for changes. Not much is happening. And remember, I'm supposed to let this ferment for 40 more days. I do see clear liquid collecting at the top. Maybe I can taste that. And this does have a sweet taste, maybe an apple aroma. So not lotus at this point, not lotus. Okay, just watch it day by day, but it doesn't seem like too much is happening, but I have to be patient. Yeah, there is a layer of liquid on the top. And after 45 days in total, so that means 41 days after I added the go-do bop, I'm going to bottle. So boil my filter bag. And instead of stirring the jar to dislodge anything stuck on the bottom, I'm just going to let things be stuck on the bottom. I'm going to dump out the jar into the filter bag and squeeze the filter bag. It's a little harder than normal. There's not a lot of water in this brew, but I get a reasonable amount in the end, a liter and a half. And that residue at the bottom, I am going to pour some water into there to dislodge it. And this is going to be my bonus bowl, or actually more than one bonus bowl this time. So I add the rest of the water here. That's 250 milliliters total for my bonus bowl. That's my second squeezing. I really want to get everything out of this since it was quite laborious to produce this. So in the end, I had 344 grams of jjigae. That seems to be the usual proportion because I did start with more rice in this recipe than normal. So here's my bonus bowls. Okay, I am supposed to wait 30 days to let this mature, but let's taste the bonus bowl right now. And it does have a warm apple aroma and sort of a brown bready aroma or molasses. It is sweet and does have tartness in the aftertaste, but there's no bitterness. It's smooth and thick. The texture is good, but it's smooth and thick, and there's no astringency or bitterness at all. So I'm going to wait more time before tasting this as recommended, But let's just take a look at this after 3 days. Look at the settling. There's pretty much no settling happening. So what is going on? This is unusual to have no settling like this. Well, let's wait a bit longer. I can't explain this right now. Okay, so it's been 11 days, and I'm going to taste it now. I know I'm supposed to wait 30 days, but I'm going to taste it today. Strange thing is that it's barely settled at all. Normally the amount of sediment, there should be this amount of sediment, but there's this amount of sediment. So something is different about this, probably something wrong. It could be something with the timing of my stages. Maybe I started the second stage too early or too late, or it could have something to do with how the cooking of the rice, something to do with the timing of how long I cooked the gumeongddeok. Maybe I didn't cook them long enough. Something like that. There's too much starch in here, but let's see how it tastes, because it didn't taste starchy when I tasted it on bottling day. So I'm gonna mix this second bottle up and taste it. Now mix it easily. There's no sediment stuck on the bottom. So whatever kind of sediment is in here, it's not sticking to the bottom. Which is what normally happens. Anyhow, let's see how it tastes. You can tell just by looking at it that it's thick. So the smell is sweet, a little bit fruity, sour, but mostly like brown bread. Okay, despite how it looks and how much sediment it looks like it is in here, it's not too thick. Now there's more sourness, tartness at the end. There's still no bitterness, no astringency. Maybe a little more complicated at the end. There's definitely syrupy sweetness to it too. So it's a little bit sticky. But there is tartness, especially how it finishes with tartness. Yeah, and I can't say that this is lotus at all. This is probably not lotus scent wine, but it has brewed to something. So even if I didn't make hahyangju in the end, this is still an interesting brew. I think people will like this. It's not my normal makgeolli. It is sweeter. The texture is different, but still smooth. It's just, yeah, there is a lot more sugar in here. It's syrupy. Yeah. So I end up with something interesting, maybe not hahyangju, but something interesting. And I'm no longer afraid of gumeongddeok, so I'll be able to use that technique in future recipes. So look forward to that. Let me know what you've been brewing in the comments. Let me know what you think of gumeongddeok, and thank you for watching.